Gog and Magog. This is the war that is mentioned multiple times in the Bible, prophesied by King David and many prophets throughout history. It is described in the books of Ezekiel, Zechariah, Isaiah, Daniel, Joel, and the Psalms. Son of man, put your face to Gog, the land of Magog, the head of the head, Meshach and Tobal, and prophesy over him. Ezekiel 38 verse 2. Ezekiel describes a powerful event that will mark the end of all wars. In this context, the name Gog emerges as the main warrior. At this point, we hear the name of the main warrior, Gog, who is the ruler of Meshach and Tobal. At the beginning of Genesis, these individuals are mentioned as the sons of Japheth, who is the son of Noah. Numerous books have been written about the Gog and Magog war, and countless commentators have explored this subject. Despite the diversity of opinions, one thing remains sure: in the near future, a brutal war will start. However, it is believed that after this war, the Messiah will come and humanity will enter a new era filled with hope and revival. It is impossible to know exactly what will happen in the future, and it is equally impossible to know when it will happen. This will be a revival process leading up to the coming of the Messiah, when God will reveal his kingdom over Israel and the entire world. It is expected that this time will see more miracles than the time of the Exodus from Egypt. It is clear to all that the world is edging closer to a potentially strong battle unlike any we have experienced before. Nevertheless, the highlight of this war is expected to center around the one place that has great value for all main religions, Jerusalem. As Ezekiel detail. And say, this is what the sovereign Lord says: I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Ezekiel 38 verses 3-4. This verse implies that Gog's war system would be irrational. He will not come to fight of his own accord, but involuntarily. I will put hooks in your jaws. Ezekiel 29 verse 4. These expressions describe a method of gaining control over an animal that refuses to come out or refuses to move. In this example, an animal is uprooted from its place using hooks in its jaws. Similarly, it is suggested that Gog will be caught and forced into a war against his will. Who else will join the total war? Persia, Cush, Put, and many nations. A mass war is described here, where the soldiers will be well equipped, dressed in shields, all holding swords. The following verse indicates the date and location of the war. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. Ezekiel 38 verse 8. The date is at the end of the days, and the place is the mountains of Israel. Gog's place is in the north of Israel. The number of people involved in this war is described as a large crowd and a great army. An army of similar size, numbering the Assyrian army that came up in 550 BC to fight for the land of Israel, was matched by the 185,000 commanders leading the militias. The incredible story that happened on that night is described in the Bible 3 times. It can be found in 2 Kings chapters 18-19, Isaiah chapters 36-37, and 2 Chronicles chapter 32. We return to the Gog War. There are several interpretations of Gog and Magog. Magog is a nation that was secluded in the far north and did not come into contact with other nations for many years. In the end of days, God will command him and cause him to be remembered for the purpose of war. In light of this, it is understandable why Ezekiel repeats in this chapter that Gog did not decide to come by himself, but rather God made him come. In the book of Zohar, it is written that Gog is the king and Magog is the state, are names that do not exist. Only after it arrives, will we understand who was meant. God calls them only by these names. According to the book, all the kings who afflicted Israel throughout history, such as Sennacherib, Nebuchadnezzar, and others, will be reborn to wage war once again in their souls. As explained, there will be a strong desire among all to conquer Jerusalem. This is not just a general prophecy, but a vision of a future where a king, predicted by the prophet Ezekiel, will clearly appear. It is a belief that one day this prophecy will come true. This is what the Sovereign Lord says, "You are the one I spoke of in former days by my servants the prophets of Israel. At that time they prophesied for years that I would bring you against them." Ezekiel 38 verse 17. The intention is that in those days, the names Gog and Magog will be forgotten, to the point where people won't even know which nation is referred to as Magog, and their king was Gog. Only when he comes to earth and the words of the prophet are fulfilled will they realize that it is King Gog who was prophesied about. He will come with his army to fight. The vast quantities of weapons that will remain after the war will no longer be used for warfare, but rather for fuel purposes, as the prophet predicted. Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small and large shields, the bows and arrows, the war clubs and spears. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. Ezekiel 39 verse 9. It will mark the end of the era of wars and the beginning of a new age where people harness their individual potential, as well as the world's, for positive and spiritual purposes, benefiting everyone in the world. What are the reasons for the occurrence of war? There are both visible and hidden factors in this war, with the final being the main reason. Let's explore the obvious reasons. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish and all her villages will say to you, "Have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hoards to loot, to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods and to seize much plunder?" Ezekiel 38 verse 13. Gog and his armies have set their sights on the wealth of the land's residents. In the verse, the prophet engages in a dialogue with Gog, asking him whether he comes as a merchant intending to do business with them or as a robber intending to steal their property. The true and underlying reason for Gog's arrival to war is spiritual, as the prophet has written. "You will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land. In days to come, Gog, I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes." Ezekiel 38 verse 16. When Gog arrives, those who previously joined with the people of Israel in bad faith will join him with great enthusiasm. Gog's future victory will appear so certain before the war that even those who do not agree to give their lives for truth and justice will find it hard to resist the temptation and will immediately join Gog. King David explains another reason for the war between Gog and Magog. It is an ideological conflict between the nations of the world and God, and those who represent him. The nations of the world may seek to sever the connection between humanity and God, between the morality and conscience that arise from a higher truth. However, it is important to remember that there will always be those who fight for God and His Son, the Messiah. The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. Psalm 2 verses 2-3. Creation was made for the eternal benefit of mankind, with the purpose of self-correction through choosing the good. When people successfully overcome their self-desires that lead to evil and stick to God's way, they force nearer to their defined goal. After 6,000 years since the creation of the world, a new era will dawn, where the world will transition to its next step, a divine existence on earth, where the material and spiritual domains harmoniously coexist, with the spiritual dimension taking precedence over material matters. It is important to remember that there are many angry prophecies in the Bible about punishments and wars, but there is one clear rule. Good prophecies are prophecies that must be fulfilled. And anger prophecies, on the other hand, are not always fulfilled if the person continues on the good path. We hope you learned something new today. If you did, give this video a like and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more informative and entertaining content. See you next time.